Okay, let's just talk about client acquisition, because a lot of people need to work on that side. I spoke to advisors. Well, we speak to advisors all the time, right?
Yes.
Some advisors are very, very good at doing that, and some really struggle. Now, those people that struggle might be used to the business they're in handing them business over.
Yeah.
Perhaps they inherited a client bank. So they can sit down and they can do the advice side, they can do the planning side, but they're not very good at the prospecting side. Okay. So using your team that you bought, because it's a really great example, I think, because they're standing starts, right? Bringing that team into view here, when it comes to client acquisition, do you help a lot with that as well, right? What types of things are they doing that's working?
So I suppose having a plan is going back to the initial conversation of people looking at this offshore industry, or the international space, should we say, keep slipping up on that. Looking at the international space, you have to have a plan when you're coming out here. And what I would say is a lot of these guys have an existing network. We already have a client database of contacts we were previously in contact with. And then it's just organizing that through the CRM for the trainee wealth managers to be contacting them. What a big mistake people make when they're looking at the international space is they feel everything's going to be handed to them. It's going to be very easy for them to onboard clients because they do have a UK background. And yeah, that does help because people have a lot more trust.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, the industry has had a very negative reputation, which makes it a lot more difficult to onboard clients initially. Mm-hmm. And if you're running the same format as every other advisor that's looking to go internationally, which is I'm qualified, I want to be given leads, you will struggle to get ahead and write business, which is where I find the team that we've onboarded at the beginning of the year, they've been a lot more active. I mean, you've seen them. They've ingrained themselves fully into the team. Yep. They rely on the partners and the managers for advice when they come against a complex case and communication. I feel those points are what has put them ahead of where a lot of advisors would be in 9 months.
They essentially they're trainee advisors, right? They're trainee planners. So they're on the pathway.
No, so they are financial advisors. They're not on the pathway. So pathway would usually be someone coming from a paraplanning or our trainee wealth managers roles going into that course. So the step up from you haven't had your advice experience, but you understand the process, you understand how to prospect. That's where the pathway comes into play. These guys had been giving advice for 2 years plus. So they were above the pathway at the point of entering Hoxton.
Yeah, fantastic. Good stuff. Great explanation. Okay, great. Lovely. So they're doing really, really well. Now, let's talk about the types of clients that they're working with, because if you're working out in Dubai, I suspect there's lots of people listening to this episode now. They're from the UK and they're thinking, well, if I go out to Dubai, then I must be working with locals, or all my clients are going to be in Dubai. What's the reality?
It comes down to where we're regulated. So obviously there's no... The kind of client, each advisor will work with a different type of client based on their personality. So not every advisor is going for the same clients. But if we looked at geographically, it comes down to where we're regulated. There's certain licenses we have gives us passporting permissions into other regions. And as you know, we're also looking at acquisitions in international markets that will give us more licenses. But the kind of target client, should we say, is based on where we're regulated. So if we are regulated and we're able to give advice to the client, we would look to onboard them as a client.
Great. Okay. So someone's listening to this. They want to come out to Dubai. Okay. And they're a UK-based financial planner. They come out to Dubai. They sit in the Dubai office. Where are we regulated and who are going to give advice to? Okay.
So we're currently regulated in the UK, Europe. So all MiFID or MiFID II permission countries. So I know Switzerland, you need an additional license in order to give the pillar investment advice. But MiFID or our SISEC license will cover most of Europe. And then we have a South African license, an Australian license, a US license. And to date, that's where we're at. We obviously have some exciting things we're working on, which will open us up into new regions.
Fantastic. So this is the thing that people need to understand, isn't it? So people are basing themselves in Dubai, not to work with just people in the UAE, but to be based in Dubai, you can work with Australian clients. You can work with clients from the USA. You can even work with clients that are in Europe or UK. So when we start to look at who could possibly make the transition over to Dubai with probably the least amount of stress, if you like, Let's talk about that. Because would it be advisable for an advisor to join us over in Dubai with zero client bank?
I mean, there are some good success stories of people that have done it, but the percentage is very low.
Okay.
And I don't mean that from a Hoxton perspective. I mean that from every international company I've worked with that have looked to just onboard UK advisors. Unless they're coming into a client servicing role where they're given clients, they usually struggle on the client acquisition side.
So let's look at those types of people in the UK. So they're sitting there, they're seeing us on LinkedIn, they're listening to this conversation, they're thinking, I want a piece of this, right? They're listening to this podcast now. Okay.
The best routes for
the
them.
best route for them. What position should they be in right now to make that transition, say, over to Dubai, for instance?
So I'd say the highest success rate is if you have clients in the UK. I'm sure I put posts out, you put posts out. There's a lot of millionaire outflows in the UK. Yeah. So I think we're targeted to see 9,500 millionaires leave the UK. I think it's like 186,000 millionaires become more mobile, so move around internationally. And I suppose if you have